Hey guys, it's Mandy. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button. This video is going to be about 10 general things that you should have included in your lease. And I am by no means an expert, but what I would suggest is that you draft up your own lease, you get it where you want it to be and where you're comfortable with it, and then you take it to an attorney and let them read over it. They'll be able to make sure that you're compliant with all the state laws and federal laws, and they can also help you with wording. Sometimes specific wording can make it easier to evict if you do get in that kind of worst case scenario. So number one, the lease term. What day does the lease start and what day does it end? And then when the term is up, what happens from there? Is your lease going to continue on a month-to-month basis under the same conditions as the lease? Or is it going to automatically renew for a year unless they give you a 30-day notice that they don't want to renew? So those are some of the things to think about with the lease term. Number two, rent. How much is rent? What day of the month is it due? What day is it late? And what's the late fee? Do be careful because there are specific laws regarding late fees in a lot of states. Usually there's a law for how many days grace period you have to give and also what the maximum late fee that you can charge is. So be careful and make sure you're compliant with that. Number three, the management, who their contact person is. So for me, I'm the contact person, and if there's a maintenance request, then there's an email address that they need to send that maintenance request to. But if there's a maintenance emergency or if they just have a question, then they can text, and I have the number that they can text me at or they can call. But for maintenance, I like to have everything in writing, so that's in the lease as well, that they either need to send a text message if it's an emergency or an email if it's not an emergency. Number four, the deposit. So how much is your deposit, and how will it be returned to them or not returned? So this is very state specific, and there's usually laws regarding this. Most of the time a deposit, you're not able to charge more than 2 months rent, but be careful because every state is different on this. So put the amount that the deposit is, and then also I include how it will be returned. I believe, and I'm just pulling this off the top of my head right now, my lease obviously is correct, but maybe I have like 45 days or maybe 30 days to return the deposit. And so in my lease it says the deposit will be returned within 30 days, or you will receive an itemized receipt of the damages and where the deposit went. Number five, occupants. This is important because some counties and states have occupancy laws and you can only have so many people per bedroom. So I, in the lease, have the number of occupants that are allowed in the house, and it's not just the maximum occupancy law. So if 2 people applied to live in the house, then I would change it in that lease and say those 2 people are occupants and they're allowed in the house. And then I also specify what duration a guest is allowed. So maybe it's 5 days, maybe it's 7 days, maybe it's only 3 days for you. And I say, a guest is only allowed to stay up to 5 consecutive days at a time and no more than 30 calendar days in a year or something. And I know that seems a little maybe strict, but if you don't do something like that, then they'll just add a 3rd occupant and they'll call that person a guest. And how do you really prove that that guest isn't a guest? So you have to have a specific number of days at which a guest becomes an occupant. And really that's just, I haven't had any issues with that, but it's just in case I do, it's there in the lease to protect me. Number 6, pets. So if you don't allow pets, put that in the lease and also put the consequences for them bringing a pet onto the property. Maybe it's a fine, maybe they have 5 days to get that pet off the property, or they're going to be evicted. Maybe, I don't know, whatever you decide there, but also do make sure you're compliant with state laws always, you can never, just because you put something in a lease, it cannot supersede a law. So be sure that you're up to date with your state laws. If you do allow pets, put how many, what the restrictions are. Do you have breed restrictions, age restrictions, weight restrictions? What type of pets do you allow? And do you charge a pet deposit, a pet fee, or pet rent? If you charge a pet fee, usually that would be non-refundable. Go ahead and put that in the lease. And then do be careful with pets though, because I think the guidelines and the laws are a little fuzzy on emotional support animals. I'm not gonna tell you anything there because I don't know, and it really varies from state to state, and I just think there's not clear guidelines at the moment for emotional support animals. Now, for service animals, you basically treat those like a person. You know, you can't discriminate against service animals at all. You can't charge a non-refundable fee for a service animal. Just be careful with those types of animals. You don't want to get into trouble there or to be accused of discrimination or anything like that. And number 7, this is one of my favorite parts, and I go over it very in detail with my tenants, but the tenant responsibilities. So some common responsibilities that you might want to give your tenant would be taking care of the lawn, mowing the grass, changing out the air filter, that kind of thing. So just go through and decide. Actually, I can make another video on what I add as my tenant responsibilities in my lease, because there's probably about 10 of them. It just might be interesting for you guys. That's the part of the lease that is always changing, because something that I think is common sense doesn't actually end up being that much common sense, and I have to add it into the lease. Yeah, so tenant responsibilities, put those all in the lease and be as specific as possible with them. Number 8, early termination. So they just signed a year-long lease. What happens if they want to terminate after 3 months? Are they still responsible for the remainder of the lease? Will you let them find a new tenant to take over? And for me, I'll just tell you what I do in my lease. If they want to terminate the lease early, they have to give me 30 days notice, plus it's an additional 1 month's rent. Number 9, the landlord or property manager access to the property. So in my state, there's not any laws surrounding this, but the best practice is that you give 24-hour notice. So that's what my lease says, that I'll give 24-hour notice before I come onto the property. But if it's an emergency, I can come over right away. And if they put in a maintenance request, that's them giving me permission to access the property and to fix the problem. Just be careful here as well, because depending on the state, if the tenant refuses for you to access the property, you may not be able to. I know it's your house, but I think in California, if the tenant tells you no, you can't come onto the property, then you really cannot come onto the property. So be careful with that. In my state, I always just try to schedule a good time with the tenant, but in the lease, I do say I can give you 24-hour notice and then just come over. Number 10, this is just some things that are in my lease that are just no. So no subletting, and I kind of explained that, no running a business within the property. So these are all single family homes. If they start running like a bakery out of the house, that's going to, my insurance does not cover that, okay? So no running a business in the houses, no dangerous or hazardous materials, no drugs, and then no breaking federal or state or county ordinances. So those are just 10 really general things that I have built my lease around. Hopefully that was helpful. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.